Okay, welcome to Art History Tuesday, everyone. Next week we will be not meeting for Art History Tuesday as there are benchmark tests and that's the time to get everything in. So this is going to be our last Tuesday for a couple weeks. Let's see. I have some announcements I'm asked to make. Remember that next week is your benchmark test. You'll receive credentials on Friday from Ms. Wade. You must complete for each subject between Monday and Friday of next week and do your best. And we do not have a benchmark test in here as we do not have an SOL in here. Okay. So my question for today, and I know it's just me and you right now, Graceland, and thank you for joining and helping out your classmates who cannot make it today, is how do those with power use architecture? So you can give me an idea in the chat box, and I'm sure no idea is a wrong one. So how do those with power use architecture? Mm-hmm. And this is a very open question too, so there's a multitude of answers. To let people know that they are important. Right. So maybe they'll show that they're important through size, right? Making a giant building. Or maybe they'll show through money, using really expensive materials, right? They try to look significant compared to everyone else. So, looking at this book right here, before I go into our talk today, can you give me a question that you might have about the piece? Ooh, great question. This is from ancient Babylon. So, and who did it? Well, we don't know specifically who made this. We are guessing a lot of ancient builders and masons had created it. But it was made in dedication actually to a goddess. Most people don't know this goddess, but I'll just see. Can you guess any ancient Babylonian goddesses or gods? Some people do. They know some of these. I believe this goddess is even mentioned in the Bible. Not well. Athena. So, yeah. So you have some ancient Western ones. Babylon worshipped different gods and goddesses as well. And actually, the names that we know of the gods and goddesses are confirmed in biblical times, but also they're cross-referenced in records from this era too. So we are looking at the gates of Ishtar. So I'm going to turn my video camera on, and I'm going to have some tea. Okay, so this here is some Paris tea actually. It's a Western tea with like a black tea with a bergamot, like citrusy flavor in here. So the tea I have today about these gates were that these were, I believe, one of 8. There's probably a couple more gates around the city of Babylon. And they are huge. We're looking at about a 4-story tall gate or wall. And there were many of these entrances. And each was different though. Each gate was actually a dedication. And they're not really, they're sturdy, these gates, but they're really more pretty than they are strong. So what does that say about ancient Babylon is they can afford to have beautiful gates as opposed to strong gates. What is their priority? Style, right. Do you think they're stressed about people attacking them? Yeah, you're right. Good instinct there. So they've become such a huge superpower in the Middle East that while they do get some threats of attack, it's clearly not a priority to them. So they have a lot more money and time to work on style. Now, Babylon, we know, had one of the ancient wonders of the world in there. Do you remember at all what the ancient wonder is? It's okay if you don't. I'll let you give me a check if you remember and an X if you don't. A lot of people don't know this one because it didn't survive to today, unlike the pyramids of Giza. They were known for their hanging gardens of Babylon. So this city was super gorgeous and lush on the inside, and then, if you can imagine, they had all these different terraced gardens on the inside as well. They brought the nature into the city, which was a pretty new concept, especially in the ancient world. You know, that's something that goes with today. You should have parks and things like that, but this is a city that, you know, believed in bringing nature inside. So it was, as the legends go, it was absolutely gorgeous. The only thing we have left of it now are some illustrations and written records. But people would travel from all around the ancient world to come see Babylon. So as they would walk up to Babylon, they would see these gates. And these are the most intact gates that we have to today. And they are several thousand years old now. You heard of that? Okay, you have hanging gardens? Good. So imagine you are walking up with your family to these gates. The average, you know, house right now at this time is 1 story. Sometimes you'll come by something that's 2 stories, but they're always pretty rickety. How do you feel if you've only ever seen 1 or 2 story buildings, all of a sudden you come up to a 4-story gate? How would that make you feel? This is the largest gate you've probably ever seen in your life. How do we feel when we see something that big? Shocked, right? And often we feel tiny, right? If something is so huge, if you've ever walked up to the sky, I don't know if you have any distinct memories of seeing a skyscraper for the first time or something. You walk up and you feel just so tiny and small, like you're looking at a mountain. And that was entirely on purpose. So our ancient king here wanted everyone to feel small around his structures, going back to what you said earlier, so that he could feel more important, so that Babylon can seem more important. And all of these gates have these different symbols on them. And if you look over here at the symbol we see right here, we have some images of lions, and then it's like a cross between a llama and a horse, this one. But these are the symbols of an ancient goddess from the area called Ishtar, which I'll type in the box. Ishtar. Have you ever heard of Ishtar before? Give me a check yes or an X no. Some people know of Ishtar or have heard of her in like an old Bible phrase. Kind of, yeah. She wasn't given a whole lot of information back in the day. She was, you know, you have to remember that people who were writing these texts did not support these ancient gods, so they definitely did not talk about them in a positive light. But she actually goes by a different name too, as a lot of gods and goddesses do. Like, you know, Athena has 2 names, like Athena and Minerva. But she has this name right here called Easter. That's how it's actually pronounced. Can you guess what Easter? What was her feast day? Can you guess what time of year it was when people would celebrate her? You're totally on point. Easter, her feast day, was celebrated in the spring, right? And then what are some, so Easter was known as the goddess of fertility. She had some of these symbols on the wall. She was known for protecting women and protecting women in childbirth. And that was a very big deal at the area. Why would people pray to a goddess that protected them, especially during childbirth? Why would that be a big deal in this early Babylonian era? She was one of the most famous gods and goddesses of all of them. It was tough to be a woman in this time, too. If you were to transport back in time, this would be a good time to visit, not a great time to stay as a woman. Yes. They wanted to be saved and their baby to be saved. Exactly. So before the rise of modern medicine and even more modern birth techniques, women had a very low chance of survival. So every time they had a baby, it was always a risk. Some people say it was a 50% chance that you'd live. Other people would say it was like a 33%, like a 1 in 3 chance that you might live. So the highest cause of young death in women was often through childbirth. But if you had successful births and were able to get over it, you actually had a longer lifespan than men, if that helps to make sense. So the most likely thing that would kill you at this time would probably be childbirth. So of course they would want to pray to a god or goddess that would protect them in that time. And they would bring offerings and sacrifices to Ishtar/Easter. And there's another couple symbols that we have in Easter that also were shared by Ishtar. Can you guess what symbols that you see in Easter time that might be shared with this fertility goddess? Lambs, definitely. Newborn lambs. What about this like mythical Easter creature that we definitely talk about a lot in the U.S.? If you're good. Rabbits, right. Now why, of all things, would rabbits be associated with a fertility goddess? What are rabbits really good at? It's the risk of having 2 rabbits of different genders. They're very fertile, you're right. And they will procreate. Like that's what they do real well. So they're an obvious example of fertility, right? And then of course you have the Easter what? Looks like the Easter egg. Another symbol of fertility as well, right? So these are all also very common feast items to have on that day. On a spring fertility holiday, people would eat, a lamb stew and have a lot of eggs. You think about it like farm life is growing again, it's lush, you're celebrating spring. All of the animals are having their own kids at this time, their own procreation. So there's an abundance everywhere. Babylon, they tried to say, is being protected by all the major gods and goddesses. And you could actually worship at the gate as well as at the temple. And this gate is in dedication to Ishtar. So there's lots of ancient descriptions of how people would try and celebrate those days. So maybe they would walk through the gate in some ceremonial fashion. If it was the Easter fertility holiday, they would lay out sometimes some tributes and sacrifices along the gate's edge. But one last thing that we want to talk about with power is particularly how these gates are colored. What's that main color that you see in the background over here? I know, yeah, you've been having some issues with probably jumping in and jumping out. For some reason, Blackboard's been kind of spotty today. But the main color that we see in the background here is blue. Can you guess where they got this rich color of blue in the ancient world? They didn't have any synthetic paints or anything. Flowers and herbs, I wish. There's no way that color would last for that long. This is actually a stone that you can get today called lapis lazuli. If you watch Steven Universe, lapis lazuli is actually a character, and it's often just called Lapis in short, but that's the full name. So lapis lazuli is this really rich blue tone of stone that can only be bought or be found in two places normally in the world. Afghanistan and I think Peru also has mines of lapis lazuli. And this is an abundant amount, so they have active mines still today. Lapis lazuli at this time in history was more expensive than gold. So the stones on these gates, all 8 gates, are painted with crushed lapis lazuli. That's the same as being painted with crushed gold. So how wealthy is Babylon then? If they can paint with gold or something worth more than gold. That's like painting with platinum today or something. They were very, very rich. So incredibly true. Imagine the rest of the land is somewhat dry, barren, lacking of color more in this area. There's some greenery here and there, but you're looking at like the traditional green to brown color scheme everywhere you go. Even in the modern towns and stuff at the time, the most lush things were inside people's houses. If you are so wealthy that you can put this much stuff on the outside of your house, like the outside of your city, you can only imagine how gorgeous the inside is, right? So this is another form of power that our king was trying to show. Okay, that's my little talk about the gates of Ishtar, some of the most memorable gates in the ancient world. And what I have right here is a really short video, if you can click on that, Gracelyn. And this just shows you what these gates look like right now. If you want to click on that and watch it, it's really short. It's just someone else's homemade video at the museum that these gates are in. They have been preserved, and they, of course, sadly, are not in the Middle East now. These are at the Pergamon Museum, I believe, in Berlin, Germany. Is that it? I might be wrong. I'll have to double check that. But if you can tell me, if you want to give me a check mark when you're done, that's when you get the true idea of a sense of scale. Even by modern day standards, these are glorious. When I always saw the picture the first time, I thought it was like a model or something. It looks very kind of like dollhouse-like. But they actually had to build a wing of this museum just for these gates to be reconstructed. And you can just give me a check mark once you're done, Gracelyn, so I know that you saw this video. And just in case people watching the recording can't for some reason access the video in here, I'm going to paste it also in the text box for those watching the recording later. It's really big, yeah. I do like sometimes looking at these homemade videos that other people have taken because you can really get the idea of what it must be like to actually be there. It's a good little virtual trip to places. Okay, so I will participate in this exercise with you. I want you to think of or look up a piece of architecture that is used to show power today and paste it on the board here. So what's a building that's designed to show off the powerful people who made it? There's a lot to choose from. Trying to find a good one. Maybe go for a classic one. Can all relate to. I am uploading the Smithsonian here, which is, I think, definitely, it looks like an ancient Greek temple, and it's somewhat of a temple to knowledge is how I think about it. And they're definitely trying to show off power of science and knowledge through the history we're looking at. Hi, India. Welcome. Right now we are posting some images of powerful buildings. If you want to load an image up here in a sort of an architecture unit today or lesson today. And Graceland, have you found one yet that you want to upload or share? I also have to keep in mind too the angle I'm seeing it. You're trying to paste it? Okay. I don't know if you have access to it, but I think you might either be able to right-click paste or click the load content button at the top right, if it will let you. India, do you have a powerful building that you would like to share? Just find it on Google and you can upload it up here. Architecture and interior design are the two subjects which my first impression is I thought I wouldn't like them until I actually started to look into them more. I actually played a trick on myself in high school. It tells me how gullible I am, but I convinced myself that I loved architecture so that I can get through my AP Art History class. And I had to do that by starting to just draw buildings over and over and over again. And it worked. Eventually I did just fall in love with architecture. And I had to come up with the right conversations. In the next slide, I'll give you a little example of what one of those conversations are. Cool. I'm excited to see it, Graceland. We also have to keep in mind that sometimes the photo angle that we get of our buildings kind of pushes the largeness and the powerfulness even more, right? So you can imagine here that this was at an extreme angle to make the building look even larger. If you're interested in that kind of photography, skewing something to make it look larger than it is, you actually, there's a pretty luscious career on documenting structures. Oh, I see yours. Yeah, another 4-story building here. The Colosseum is for sure, like, I believe even larger than the gates of Ishtar, because those stories are like, what, it looks like 5 humans tall from the scale I'm seeing. I actually went here in high school too, and this is, I went on like a trip to Italy. I studied Latin for a couple of years. My first job, I saved up money to go on a school trip, and I fell in love with actually seeing this in person. And the crazy thing is how well preserved it truly is. It's like a marvel of architecture and how long it's lasted. And the fact that before, I believe, World War II, it was still in almost pristine condition. There was some rubble, of course, but in World War II, parts of it were blasted out and gouged out by, I believe, Mussolini's men to take raw material for the war effort on their side. But yeah, great job. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so this is an exercise that I like to do. How does this space make you feel? So this is any feeling that you have, I want you to think about as being derived by the interior designer and the architect. So every feeling that you have when you walk into a space is normally created by the person who has made the space. So if you guys can write on the board here just some emotions that you might feel of walking into these different rooms. You can type on the room or next to the room. Just like the size of a structure is designed to make you feel smaller, the interior of a structure is designed to make you feel a certain way. And each of these interiors are made by 2 different interior designers. And if you can imagine, they have a portfolio built up of really going off that feeling. Someone who has the money says, hey, I want my house to feel like this. Let me call this interior designer to set that up. I believe you guys have the whiteboard tools. Just right next to the room feeling that you might have. I feel lush, antique, polished. I get these vibes right here. Whoever has paid for this design definitely has a lot of money. But also they seem, it kind of feels like a study. And yet there's also like a little kind of old school TV back here. This is by no means fancy now. Graceland, if you want to tell me how the image on the right makes you feel. Ooh, comfort, homey, whimsical, nice. Okay. Yeah, that's definitely, I believe, a part of the design too. The right side doesn't feel so homey to me. I think the common word I'll put over here is Industrial. Do you hear that much? I don't know if you like to watch any home renovation shows or people like redesign rooms and stuff, but industrial is a common word that is an aesthetic that some people really like. They have all the poured concrete walls and things like that. Modern, open, stylish, yes. I imagine, well, it's kind of hard to tell the age of either people in these rooms, but this person to the right truly loves black and white. Because just imagine that this whole room could have color, but you only see a little pop of brown on the legs, some border on the carpet, some little pops of color in the background. All that's purposeful. I wonder if they also dress in black and white too. Okay, so let me open up this link to you. I have a link here. This is the video that kept trying to start early for me. I'm going to safely copy paste this into the chat box for you. And this is more of an ethics question that we have going on today with the middleman industry. So we are at a time in history in which we're much more aware of how things have been done in the past. But how lapis lazuli is mined today isn't so different, actually, from the ancient world. So when you come back from watching this video, you can help me brainstorm, why do you think the situation exists? Can it be changed? And does the artist/consumer have power? So do we have power to change the situation either? It's a short photo essay too. So whenever you come back, I'm happy to work with you on this. I'll be your buddy. But I think you'll be interested to see how we get lapis lazuli now. Okay. Yeah. The situation exists. The reason why people are so willing to do it is so that they can definitely make money for their families. So when I talk about can it be changed, I'm really talking about the conditions, the pay, things like that. Do you think any of the negatives of these situations can be changed? The living situation. You can give me a yes or no for that one too. Yeah. The consumer definitely has power over how much it will cost. And the consumer can also choose providers, right? And this happens today. If there's always a lot of push to try and get governments to make laws for specific codes and things like that. And it takes a long time, right? Like it can take many years for progress to change to happen. But if a consumer all of a sudden says, actually, I don't want to buy this unless it's fair trade. And if enough consumers get involved and say, I don't want to buy this material, unless that we can see that people are actually being cared for who are harvesting it, the company will change its policies because obviously they still want to sell, right? So consumers definitely do have some power, but the trick is always finding the source, right? Finding, looking up the ethics of how something is obtained. And we as artists have to look at that all the time. So as I said earlier, Grayson, I'm not going to make you do this alone. Which side do you want to take for this piece, style or process? We're describing the gates of Ishtar here. Do you want to describe the style, so what it looks like, or do you want to describe the process of how it was made? And I'll take the other. It doesn't matter? Okay, then I'll do the process and you can do the style. Remember, style can be a few words. It doesn't have to be intense. Made with lapis lazuli. Expensive. Another note that I can give is that 4 stories tall. And decorated with symbols of Ishtar. Right. Prettier as opposed to strong. Good observation there. Lots of style. Yeah, style and expense for sure. It also looks ancient too, right? It's always hard to describe that to people, but people know it when they see it. It does look old. Definitely shows power. Cool. Give me a check mark if you're good to move on. Cool. All right. So which one do you want to take? We're going to compare and contrast this week's and last week's work. Do you want to take this week and I'll take last week? So how are they different and how are they similar? Okay, cool. I'll take Mask of Agamemnon then. So this is different. It's a burial mask made from gold. It represents a man and not a god. Say it's similar. They're both expensive materials. It's a wall. You're right. One's a mask, One's a wall, or really a gate, but yeah. Yes, I definitely agree. The Mask of Agamemnon might have taken a couple weeks, but the Gates of Ishtar probably took many years. Even just getting the material was a lot harder for the Gates of Ishtar. So imagine with the ancient digging sites, like people just had like pickaxes and hammers, and that's kind of it. There's more goddess, you're right. Do you think there's anything that they have in common other than the expensive materials? Thank you. You are on it, Grayson. Made to show power. 100%. All right. So how does this work affect the art world, Gates of Ishtar? I'll put down something and you can put down something. I think. Welcome back, Graceland. Do you think we have to add anything else to this? How does this work affect the art world? Or do you think that this summarizes it? Okay. Give me a check mark if you're good to move on. Got one slide left. Yes, to make other people know they are rich. I definitely think that this still exists today. All right. And then we can move to the last slide, which is how does this impact you? So how does this, knowing these new concepts in art about architecture, using wealthy things to show power, using size to show power, how does this impact your own work? And then after this, we're done. I think for me as an artist, I can continue to think about different materials I can use. I can think when someone is commissioning me to create an artwork for them, how can I show them their power? And we all have different forms of power. Make stuff with style, yeah. I like that. All right, I'm going to turn off the recording.